hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Kenton Brower cracked an egg against the mixing bowl with one practice tap. Morning light filtered through the kitchen window, casting golden rectangles across the oak countertop he'd built himself. "How many pancakes you want today, buddy?" he asked, glancing at his son perched on the barstool. 10-year-old Ash looked up from his book. "3, with blueberries." "You got it." Kenton folded berries into the batter, hands moving with the precise economy of motion that defined everything he did. The doorbell rang. Kenton wiped his hands. "That's early. Your mom said her flight wasn't getting in until 11. He turned toward the hallway, but a sudden grip on his wrist stopped him. Ash's fingers dug into his skin with surprising strength. "Dad," Ash whispered, voice tight with urgency. "Don't let her in." "What?" "It's not Mom." Ash's eyes darted toward the front door. "We have to run. Now." The doorbell rang again, followed by the sound of a key in the lock. "Ash, what are you?" "Dad, please." Ash's voice cracked. "I'll explain, but we need to go." Out the back. Something in his son's certainty cut through Kenton's confusion. Without another word, he grabbed his wallet and keys and followed Ash through the back door. "Hello, Kenton?" "Ash." Marla's voice echoed from the front hallway. Ash flinched, pulling Kenton with unexpected force. They slipped into the yard and cut through the side passage to the driveway, where Kenton's old Dodge Durango S.A.T.A.S. They rounded the corner. Kenton caught a glimpse of their front door, standing open, Marla's silhouette framed in the doorway. Even from a distance, her stillness seemed wrong, watchful, calculating. The sight sent a chill down his spine. "Ash," Kenton said, his voice carefully level as they merged onto the main road. "What was that about?" His son had his knees pulled up to his chest. "It's not Mom. Something's wrong with her." "I need more than that, bud." "What happened?" Ash took a shuddering breath. "Last night, I got up to get water. I heard Mom's voice coming from the study. I thought she was calling us from Colorado." Kenton frowned. "She didn't call me. She wasn't talking to us." Ash's eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. "She was talking to someone else. A man." "Dad." She said things that made no sense. "What kind of things?" "Something about clearing the asset and making sure there were no loose ends." Ash turned to him, eyes wide. "Dad," she said your name, and then she laughed. Not Mom's laugh, something cold. Kenton pulled into a gas station parking lot and faced his son. "Ash, this is serious. Are you absolutely sure about what you heard?" Ash nodded, his jaw set in a way that mirrored Kenton's own expression when confronted with hard truths. "I thought maybe I dreamed it, but then I saw her at the door and her eyes." He trailed off. "Dad, whatever's in our house, it's not Mom." The pragmatic part of Kenton's brain wanted to dismiss this as imagination. But the other part, the part that had kept him alive during 2 tours in Iraq, recognized genuine fear. "Okay," Kenton said finally. "We need somewhere to regroup." He pulled out his phone and called his old Marine friend. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered. "Jandro." "Will, it's Kenton. I need a favor. My son, and I need a place to lay low for a day or 2. Somewhere private. Everything okay?" "Not sure yet." Another pause. "The cabin's empty. Code's the same as last time. Keys under the blue rock by the back door." "Thanks. I owe you. You paid up 15 years ago in Fallujah, brother." Kenton ended the call. "We're going to Will's cabin. About 2 hours east, up in the mountains." "Dad, do you believe me?" Kenton squeezed his son's shoulder. "I believe you saw something that scared you. That's enough for now." The road narrowed as they climbed higher into the mountains. Kenton drove mechanically, muscle memory guiding the Durango around familiar curves. After stopping for food, Kenton tried Marla's cell phone. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Marla, it's me. Call me back." He kept the message deliberately vague. Back on the road, Kenton asked, "Ready to tell me more about what you heard?" Ash set his sandwich down. It started with her saying, "Everything's in place." Then a man's voice, but I couldn't make out what he said. Then Mom laughed and said, "Kenton doesn't suspect anything. He's too wrapped up in his workshop." Ash's voice dropped to a whisper. Then she said the thing about clearing the asset and no loose ends. "Asset," Kenton repeated. "You're sure that's the word she used?" Ash nodded. It sounded like a spy movie or something. Kenton's phone buzzed. Marla. He put on speaker. Kenton, where are you guys? The stove was on, and the back door was open. Is everything okay? Her voice carried the right notes of concern, but something in the cadence struck Kenton as rehearsed. Yeah, everything's fine, he lied smoothly. Ash wasn't feeling well, so we headed out for some fresh air. Thought a drive might help. Oh, you could have left a note. Sorry, it was sudden. How was your flight? Fine. Earlier than expected. Listen, when will you be back? I brought everyone souvenirs from Colorado. Kenton caught Ash's eye, noting his son's rigid posture. Not sure. Might make a day of it. Ash wanted to check out that waterfall trail we've been talking about. In April? Kenton, it's 40 degrees outside. We're dressed for it. We'll call when we're headed back. After ending the call, Kenton drummed his fingers against the steering wheel. What do you think? Ash shook his head vehemently. That's not her, Dad. Something's wrong. Kenton nodded, trusting his son's instincts. Did Mom seem different recently? Before her trip? Maybe. She's been on her phone more, and she gets these calls that make her leave the room. How long has this been going on? I don't know. A few months? She doesn't laugh as much anymore, and she doesn't ask about my stuff, school and friends and stuff. Kenton absorbed this silently. He'd noticed changes in Marla, 2 subtle shifts in routine, increased work hours, decreased interest in family activities. He'd attributed it to the natural ebb and flow of a long marriage. Now he wondered if he'd missed something crucial. They arrived at Will's cabin, a small log structure nestled among the trees. Inside, Kenton went through the motions of arrival, checking the circuit breaker, turning on the water, starting a fire in the wood stove. Ash explored the space, examining the few photos on the mantel, most featuring younger versions of Will and Kenton in desert camo, arms slung around each other's shoulders. Is that you? Ash asked, pointing to one photo. Kenton nodded. Me and Will. Baghdad, 2007. You look different. I was different. As the cabin warmed, Kenton outlined his plan. First, we need more information. I need to get back to the house, check some things. You can't go back there, Ash protested. What if she's waiting? I won't go in while she's there. But I installed security cameras last year. I need to access the footage. And I need to check her tablet. And Mom's tablet, Ash added. She never lets it out of sight, but she always leaves it charging in her nightstand drawer. They arranged for Kenton to return to the house during Marla's regular yoga class. Ash would stay at the cabin. I'll be back in 2 hours, max, Kenton said. If anything happens, call Will. Be careful, Dad. The drive back to Portland seemed shorter. Kenton parked 2 blocks from their house and approached on foot. From across the street, he watched Marla emerge, dressed in yoga attire. She got in her Audi and drove away. Kenton entered through the back door, moving silently through his home. In his office, he downloaded the past week's security footage onto a portable drive, then moved to the bedroom. Marla's nightstand drawer opened smoothly. Inside, her tablet sat charging. Kenton disconnected it and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He was about to leave when he noticed her suitcase on the bed. That a systematic check revealed a hotel receipt not from Colorado, but from Las Vegas, dated 3 days ago. Kenton photographed the receipt, then carefully returned everything to its original position. He was closing the suitcase when he heard a car door slam outside. Marla, home early, he slipped into their walk-in closet, leaving the door cracked. Marla entered, phone pressed to her ear. No, I can't talk now, she said, voice low and tense. They're not here. Yes, both of them. She paused, listening. I don't know, Preston. I called, and Kenton said they went hiking, but something feels off. He's not the spontaneous type. Preston. The name burned into Kenton's memory. We may need to accelerate the timeline, Marla continued. If he suspects anything. Another pause. No, I'm handling it. There's too much at stake to get cold feet now. Once it's done, there's no going back. She ended the call, then pulled out a second phone from her purse. She typed briefly, then returned it to her purse. With practiced efficiency, she deleted the call from her main phone's history, then headed to the bathroom. The moment the bathroom door closed, Kenton slipped out and exited through the back door. Back in his car, hands shaking slightly, he sat processing what he'd heard. Marla was planning something with someone named Preston. something that had a timeline and involved Kenton. And she'd lied about Colorado. She'd been in Las Vegas instead. The pieces didn't form a complete picture yet, but the outline taking shape was ugly. Scene 3. Red flag, she called him Preston. Kenton explained, spreading the contents of his intelligence gathering on the cabin's small dining table. And she definitely wasn't in Colorado. The receipt shows she stayed at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. What's the tablet say? Ash asked, leaning forward. It's locked. We need her passcode. Ash bit his lip. Try 0823. Your birthday? Ash nodded. Kenton entered the digits, but the screen flashed red. Try 2712. What's that? The day you guys got married. December 27th. Kenton entered 2712, and the tablet unlocked. Good thinking. Together, they checked Marla's emails, messages, and browser history. A folder labeled PC Projects caught Kenton's attention. Inside were dozens of encrypted files. Kenton tried various passwords without success. We need help with this, he admitted. Someone who knows more about breaking into encrypted files than I do. They arranged to meet Will and his cousin Rachel, a skilled hacker who'd served time for cybercrime, the following morning. That night, Kenton turned to the security footage he'd downloaded. He and Ash watched as the cameras captured Marla returning to their house the previous night, hours before her flight was scheduled to arrive. She came home last night, Kenton murmured. Not this morning. The footage showed Marla entering stealthily. Later, at 1:43 a.m., another car pulled into the driveway, a dark sedan. A man emerged tall, well-dressed, with carefully styled hair. Is that Preston? Ash asked. Could be. Kenton captured a screenshot of the man's face on screen. Marla let the man in. He stayed for 47 minutes before leaving. She's been seeing him for a while, Kenton concluded, checking earlier footage that showed more nighttime meetings. So mom's cheating on you? Ash asked bluntly. That's what this is about. Kenton shook his head slowly. I think it's more than that, bud. The way they're acting, the secrecy, the burner phone, the talk about clearing assets and timelines, that's not just an affair. Before Kenton could elaborate, his phone buzzed with another call from Marla. He put on speaker. Kenton, where are you two? Her voice held an edge of frustration, poorly disguised as concern. It's getting late. Ash has school tomorrow. We decided to stay overnight, Kenton replied smoothly. Found a nice place with a view of the falls. Without a change of clothes? His medication? Kenton, this isn't like you. Kenton's eyes narrowed. Ash didn't take any medication. We'll manage. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon. After ending the call, Kenton turned to Ash. You don't take medication? No. Ash's face paled. Dad, what's happening? Kenton pulled his son into a tight hug. I don't know yet, but we're going to find out, and we're going to handle it. Together. As Ash finally drifted off to sleep in the cabin's small loft, Kenton sat at the table, reviewing everything they discovered. Marla's secret trips, the mysterious Preston, encrypted files, coded conversations about clearing assets, and the lie about medication. Kenton had survived 2 tours in Iraq by trusting his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that his family was in danger and the threat was coming from within. Morning arrived with a fine mist hanging between the pines. Kenton and Ash prepared to meet Will and his cousin at a coffee shop in a small town 20 miles from the cabin. Will was already there when they arrived, occupying a corner table with clear sight lines to both the entrance and the back exit. Some habits never faded. Brower, Will greeted, clasping Kenton's hand firmly before turning to Ash. And young Brower, good to finally meet you, son. They ordered drinks and maintained casual conversation until a woman approached their table. Rachel Jandro bore little resemblance to her cousin Small, where he was large, with keen dark eyes that missed nothing. This the job? She asked without preamble. Sliding into the booth beside Will, Kenton nodded. Encrypted files. And we need information on someone. He passed her the name, Preston, and the screenshot from the security footage. Let's see what we're working with. Kenton pushed Marla's tablet across the table. Rachel examined it, then connected it to her laptop and began typing rapidly. The encryption's solid, she murmured. Professional grade. Not something your average person would use. Can you break it? Will asked. Rachel shot him a withering look. Of course I can, but it'll take time, and I'll need a secure location with reliable internet. They developed a plan. What would take Rachel to his apartment to work on the encrypted files. Kenton and Ash would remain mobile, checking into a motel under Will's name while they continued investigating WY Noon. They had established their base of operations. Will and Rachel set up at Will's apartment, while Kenton and Ash checked into a motel in Gresham on the city's outskirts. That evening, Will called with disturbing news. Rachel identified your Preston Connolly, trust fund kid turned entrepreneur. 5 failed startups in 7 years, but never seems to run out of money. Any connection to Marla? Nothing obvious yet, but Rachel found something else. There's a money trail from your joint account to a shell company called PC Ventures. 3 transfers over the past 4 months, totaling about $120,000. The number hit Ken hard. That's impossible. I would have noticed. It came from an investment account. Something about early liquidation of mutual funds. The paperwork looks legitimate, has both your signatures. My signature was forged, Kenton said. It has to be. After ending the call, he turned to find Ash watching him, expression solemn. Mom took money, didn't she? He asked. For that Preston guy. Kenton considered sugarcoating the truth, then discarded the impulse. Yes, a significant amount from our investments. So she's been planning this for months. Looks that way. Ash hesitated. Is she trying to leave us? For him, I don't think so, bud. I think it's more complicated than that. The next day, Will called again. Rachel cracked the first batch of files. You need to see this. 20 minutes later, Kenton and Ash arrived at Will's apartment. Rachel sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by takeout containers, her eyes fixed on her laptop screen. Show them, Will instructed. Rachel turned the laptop around. These are screenshots from a private chat between Marla and Preston Connolly, going back about 9 months. The earliest messages were innocuous business contacts exchanged, followed by coffee meetings and lunch dates. But the tone shifted about 6 months in, becoming more personal than intimate. Alongside the budding affair, a different conversation emerged, one about money, investments, and opportunities. He pitched it as a sure thing, Rachel explained. A tech startup with guaranteed government contracts. All she needed was seed money. The $120,000, Kenton murmured. Initially, yes, but then the demands increased. So she's a victim? Ash asked, hope flickering in his voice. Rachel hesitated. Not exactly. There's more. She opened a video file. This was recorded about a month ago. The footage showed Marla and Preston in what appeared to be a hotel room, sitting close together. The insurance policy is substantial, Marla was saying, her expression calculating. $2 million in total. We'd split it 50-50. Preston stroked her arm. And you're sure they won't look too closely? Accidents happen, but $2 million raises eyebrows. Kennan's workshop is the perfect setup, Marla continued. All those chemical finishes, sawdust everywhere. A faulty circuit could easily start a fire. With him working late so often, it would look completely natural. Ash made a small, strangled sound. Kenton pulled him close as they continued watching. What about the kid? Preston asked, pouring more wine. Marla's expression hardened. Ash is with his grandmother that weekend. He'll be fine, and afterward, you'll have a traumatized 10-year-old on your hands. Children are resilient, Marla replied, her voice chillingly detached. Besides, I've been researching boarding schools. A change of scenery would be good for him after such a tragedy. Kenton stopped the video, unable to watch more. The room fell silent except for Ash's ragged breathing. She was going to kill you, Ash whispered. For money, and get rid of me, he added, his voice small and wounded. Kenton pulled his son tighter against him, fighting to control his own rage and betrayal. That's not going to happen. Either part. Will's expression was thunderous. We have enough here for the police. Maybe, Rachel cautioned, but much of it was obtained illegally, and conspiracy charges are notoriously difficult to prove without an actual attempt. So we wait until she tries to kill me. Kenton asked, his voice tight. No, Rachel said. We build a better case. And I may have found a way to do that. She opened another file, a background report on Preston Connolly. This isn't his first rodeo. 3 years ago in Phoenix, a woman named Abigail Winters died in a car accident. Her brake lines were cut. The primary beneficiary of her $1.5 million insurance policy was her fiancé of 2 months, Preston Connolly. He wasn't convicted. Insufficient evidence. But there was enough suspicion that the insurance company fought the payout. They settled out of court. He got half the money in exchange for signing an NDA. And then he moved to Portland and found a new target, Kenton concluded. Marla. Exactly. A year before Abigail, there was a woman in San Diego, Tessa Rivera. Similar pattern, but she survived the accident of the carbon monoxide leak in her condo. She later recanted her accusations against Preston. Also signed an NDA. He's a predator, Will said flatly. Serial Black Widow, male version. And now he's working with Marla. Kennan's mind raced. We need to find this Tessa Rivera and anyone else who might have encountered Preston. Richel pulled up another video file. This was recorded last week in Las Vegas. The footage showed Marla entering a hotel room, greeting Preston with a passionate kiss. As they separated, another woman emerged from the bathroom, attractive, mid-30s, with a calculating smile. Marla, meet Kelsey, Preston said on screen. She's been helping me with the technical aspects of our project. Marla shook the woman's hand, visibly uncomfortable. I thought this was between us. Oh, don't worry, Kelsey replied, her voice honey-sweet with an undertone of steel. I'm very discreet and very experienced with these particular problems. Richel looked up. I've identified Kelsey Mercer, former pharmaceutical researcher, fired for ethics violations, specialized in toxicology. The implications hung heavy. A conspiracy involving not 2, but 3 people. A specialist in poisons. A plan nearly ready to execute. We need to move fast, Kenton said, his decision crystallizing. And we need to separate them. Divide and conquer. Will nodded. What's the play? We set our own trap, Kenton replied, voice hardening with resolve. Using the same weaknesses they plan to exploit in me, predictability, routine, trust. The Marquis Hotel in downtown Portland embodied discreet luxury. Kenton sat in a rented sedan across the street, watching the entrance. Target approaching. Will's voice crackled through the burner phone. He was positioned in the hotel bar, monitoring the lobby. Kenton straightened as Marla's Audi pulled into the hotel's parking garage. According to the fabricated email Richel had sent from Preston's account that morning, they were meeting to finalize the timeline for their plan. She's alone, Will confirmed moments later. Headed to the elevators. Blue dress, black jacket. Kennan gave it 5 minutes, then entered the hotel through a side entrance, taking the service stairs to the 4th floor. Room 412 had been reserved under Preston Connolly's name, courtesy of Richel's digital sleight of hand. Kenton used the key card she programmed and slipped inside, positioning himself in the suite's separate sitting area. At precisely 2 p.m., a knock sounded at the door. Kenton remained still, listening as Marla entered, calling Preston's name softly. Preston. Her voice carried a note of uncertainty. Kenton stepped into view. He couldn't make it. Marla froze, color draining from her face. For a moment, shock rendered her features almost unrecognizable. Then her expression smoothed, a mask of confusion and concern sliding into place. Kenton? What are you doing here? How did you? Don't. His voice was quiet but sharp. We're well past that, Marla. She assessed him quickly, calculating options. I don't know what you think is happening, but $2 million. Kenton's words stopped her cold. That's what my life is worth to you. Split 50-50 with your boyfriend. Marla's facade cracked, revealing something hard and cold beneath. You've been going through my things. You've been planning my murder. A tense silence stretched between them. 15 years of marriage, reduced to this moment of naked truth. Marla broke first, moving to the minibar and pouring herself a drink with steady hands. How much do you know? She asked finally, not bothering with further denials. Everything. The affair. The money transfers. The meetings in Las Vegas. Your plans for a convenient accident in my workshop. Kenton kept his voice level despite the rage simmering beneath. And Ash at boarding school afterward, so he wouldn't be in your way. Something flickered in Marla's eyes at the mention of their son. Where is Ash now? Safe. Away from you. She sipped her drink, visibly recalculating. What do you want, Kenton? Money? The house. The casualness of her question stoked Kenton's anger. I want to understand. How long have you been plotting this? Was any of it real? Marla sighed, impatience creeping into her expression. Does it matter? We want different things. We've been living separate lives for years. That's a reason for divorce, not murder. Please. She rolled her eyes. Always so literal, so black and white. It's business, Kenton. An opportunity. Preston showed me what we could achieve together. By killing me and taking my life insurance. By removing obstacles efficiently. She studied him over the rim of her glass. You've always been an obstacle to what I wanted. So settled, so content with mediocrity. Each word struck like a physical blow. And Ash? Is he an obstacle too? Something complicated crossed Marla's face. Ash was a mistake. A distraction from my career at a crucial time. But he's not the issue here. He heard you, you know. Kenton watched her carefully. The night before you came home. He heard you talking about clearing the asset and no loose ends. That's why we ran. Because even our 10-year-old son recognized you'd become a threat. Surprise rippled across Marla's features. Ash was supposed to be asleep. He's smarter than you give him credit for. Marla's expression hardened. It's not personal, Kenton. It's practical. The insurance payout would set us all up for life, including Ash. He'd have the best education money could buy. Funded by his father's murder. A tragic accident, she corrected. No one would ever know the difference. Kenton pulled out his phone and played a video Rachel had extracted footage of Preston and Kelsey discussing how they would stage Marla's own death after Kenton was eliminated. Marla's face went completely still as she listened to Preston's plans to dispose of her once she'd served her purpose. He's using you, Kenton said quietly, just like he used Abigail Winters in Phoenix and Tessa Rivera in San Diego. Marla's composure slipped. You're lying. Preston loves me. We have plans. Yes, he has plans. For your money and your life insurance. And then for your death. Kenton slid a folder across the table between them. Abigail died in a car accident 3 years ago. Preston collected half her life insurance before disappearing. Tessa survived her accident, but recanted her accusations after signing an NDA. Marla opened the folder with trembling hands, scanning the police reports and news articles Rachel had compiled. This doesn't prove anything, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. You're not special to him, Marla. You're a mark, a means to an end. And once he gets what he wants from you, you'll be disposable. Understanding dawned in her expression. This is being recorded. Yes. The district attorney is in the next room, listening to every word. Marla looked around wildly, as if seeking an escape route. Finding none, she slumped in her chair. I'm going to prison, aren't I? Almost certainly, Kenton confirmed. No satisfaction in the words. The question is for how long? Cooperation now could mean the difference between 20 years and life without parole. A strange calm settled over Marla as the reality of her situation crystallized. And Ash? What happens to him? He stays with me. Sole custody. Will you tell him what happened? The truth. Kenton studied the woman who had been his wife, trying to reconcile her with the stranger who had plotted his death. I'll tell him you made terrible choices, that you lost your way. Marla nodded slowly, then squared her shoulders. All right, I'm ready to make a statement. District Attorney Moore entered with recording equipment. As Marla began her confession detailing how she met Preston, how their relationship evolved into conspiracy, Kenton found himself withdrawing emotionally, creating distance between himself and the horrifying narrative unfolding. This woman was not the Marla he had married. Perhaps she never had been. When Marla finished her statement, Moore signaled to his assistants to stop recording. Mrs. Brower, you'll need to come with us now. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and theft. As the assistants recited Miranda rights, Marla turned to Kenton one last time. Tell Ash I'm sorry, not for getting caught for being the kind of mother who could consider him an obstacle. He deserves better. Kenton nodded, finding no words adequate for the moment. After Moore left with Marla, Kenton remained in the suite, staring out at the river. His phone buzzed with a text from Will, all clear. Ready when you are. It was time to collect his son and begin the long process of rebuilding. Preston's been granted bail, Will reported, voice tight with anger. Family money came through. $2 million, cash bond. Kenton set down the knife he'd been using to chop vegetables, his knuckles whitening. How is that possible? He's facing murder charges in multiple states. Preliminary charges only in Arizona and California. Complex jurisdictional issues. His father hired a team of attorneys who argued he's not a flight risk due to the substantial nature of his family's local holdings. That's bullshit, Kenton said, then glanced at Ash and lowered his voice. He has resources in multiple states, connections overseas. There's something else. Kelsey was found dead in her cell last night. Apparent suicide. Cold dread settled in Kenton's stomach. Suicide, that's the official story. Hanged herself with bedsheets. The implication hung between them. Kelsey had been Preston's accomplice and liability a witness who could testify against him. He's cleaning house, Kenton concluded, eliminating loose ends. After ending the call, Kenton turned to find Ash watching him. Is Preston getting out of jail? He asked directly. Kenton nodded. Temporarily. His family posted bail while he waits for trial. But he'll still go to prison, right? For what he did. That's the plan. Kenton attempted a reassuring smile. The justice system takes time, but it works. Ash's brow furrowed. Dad, what if it doesn't? What if he gets away? Later that night, after Ash had gone to bed, Kenton made a decision. He called a victim's advocate specializing in high-risk cases. Kelsey Mercer is dead, he said without preamble. Preston walks tomorrow. I need to speak with someone who survived him. The next day, Kenton met Tessa Rivera at a nondescript motel on the outskirts of Portland. The woman sat at a small table by the window, positioned to see both the door and the parking lot. You must be Brower, she said, studying him with intense eyes. I'm Tessa Rivera. At least, that's who I was before Preston Connolly destroyed my life. Thank you for meeting me, Kenton began, but Tessa cut him off with a sharp gesture. Let's skip the pleasantries. I'm breaking my NDA by being here. So I'll talk, you'll listen, and then we'll both leave and never contact each other again. Clear? Kenton nodded, recognizing the brittle edges of someone who had survived trauma. Preston found me after my divorce, Tessa began. I was vulnerable, rebuilding my life, suddenly managing wealth I hadn't earned. He was charming, attentive, seemingly perfect. The pattern matched what Kenton had pieced together from Marla's case. 6 months in, he suggested an investment opportunity, Tessa continued. By month 8, he was living in my house, managing my finances to reduce my stress. By month 10, he was suggesting changes to my will and insurance policies. How did you realize what was happening? Kenton asked that a bitter smile crossed Tessa's face. I didn't. Not until I woke up in the hospital after nearly dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. She pushed up her sleeve, revealing a jagged scar along her forearm. I broke through a window, trying to escape. The police didn't pursue charges. Preston had an airtight alibi. The faulty furnace appeared to be just that faulty. When I was released from the hospital, I found my accounts drained, properties remortgaged, credit cards maxed out. In the NDA, his family offered a settlement fraction of what I'd lost in exchange for my silence. I was broke, traumatized, unable to work. I took it. Shame and anger mingled in her expression. I've been running ever since, changing names, staying off the grid, until I saw his face on the news last week. Tessa slid a thumb drive across the table. Everything I have. Financial records, communication patterns, property holdings, known associates. The picture that emerges isn't just of a con man, it's of a predator who's potentially responsible for at least 7 deaths across 5 states. Why give this to me? Kenton asked. Because you're uniquely positioned to use it. Your wife is in custody, but alive. You have legitimate access to evidence the rest of U.S. couldn't obtain. And you have a personal stake in ensuring Preston doesn't continue his operation. Tessa stood, gathering her belongings. What you do with that information is your choice. But know this. If Preston walks free, he will kill again. It's not a question of if, but when and who. That evening, Ken met with Will. "I need your help," he said simply. "One last operation." Will studied his friend's face. "This isn't the sandbox anymore, brother. Different rules of engagement." "The objective remains the same," Kenton countered. "Neutralize a threat. Protect the innocent." Will nodded. "What's the plan?" They worked through the details methodically. Preston had retreated to a luxury property in the Cascade Mountains while awaiting trial. According to Tessa's information, he was planning to liquidate assets and disappear within the week, likely using falsified documents already prepared for such a contingency. Their objective was clear: obtain irrefutable evidence of Preston's crimes that would ensure he never walked free again, regardless of expensive lawyers or family connections. 3 days later, as evening shadows lengthened across the mountainside, Kenton approached Preston's secluded property. Will had established surveillance, confirming that Preston was alone, his family security detail having been dismissed. Kenton moved silently through the tree line, the skills honed in combat returning with muscle memory. He carried no weapon beyond a recording device and the thumb drive containing Tessa's evidence. Inside the house, he moved with measured steps, avoiding creaking floorboards. The house was oppressively silent, except for Preston's voice from the study. "The arrangements are finalized," Preston was saying into his phone. "The identity is solid: banking records, property holdings, everything needed to establish presence in Buenos Aires." A pause. "No, the evidence is circumstantial at best. Without Kelsey's testimony, they have nothing but the word of a scorned wife trying to save herself." Taking a deep breath, Kenton pushed open the study door. Preston looked up, startled but not frightened. After a moment of surprised silence, he smiled, the practiced, confident smile of a man accustomed to controlling any situation. "Mr. Brower," he greeted, setting down his glass. "This is unexpected, and technically a violation of my bail conditions." "I'm not concerned with technicalities," Kenton replied. "We need to talk." Preston ended his call with a murmured excuse, then leaned back in his chair. "Breaking and entering is a serious offense. Though I suppose, compared to your wife's activities, it's relatively minor." "Let's discuss your activities instead," Kenton suggested. 7 deaths across 5 states. Countless financial frauds. A pattern of predation spanning at least a decade. Something flickered in Preston's eyes, surprise quickly masked by renewed confidence. "Quite the imagination you have. My attorneys would call it defamation. Tessa Rivera would call it truth," Kenton countered, "as would Abigail Winter's family, and Emily Hansen's, and the others whose lives you've destroyed." Preston's smile tightened. "Allegations require evidence, Mr. Brower. Evidence that has consistently failed to materialize in any actionable form. Until now." Kenton held up the thumb drive. "Everything, Preston. Financial records, communication patterns, property transactions, witness statements. The complete picture of your operation, including connections to Kelsey's convenient suicide." For the first time, Preston's composure slipped, revealing a flash of genuine concern. A desperate bluff from a desperate man. "Whatever you think you have, it won't stand up in court." "I'm not interested in court," Kenton stated flatly. "I'm interested in justice." Preston raised an eyebrow. "Vigilante justice? That doesn't seem your style, Mr. Brower. You're a builder, not a destroyer." "I'm a father," Kenton corrected. "A father whose family was targeted by a predator who's escaped consequences too many times." "And what exactly do you propose?" Preston asked, his tone conversational despite the tension evident in his posture. "I'm here for your confession. Complete, detailed, and irrefutable." Preston laughed, the sound genuine in its disbelief. "And why would I provide that?" "Because your alternatives are considerably worse." Kenton maintained eye contact. "Option 1. You confess, provide details that can be verified, and face justice through the system. You might eventually see freedom again, decades from now." And Option 2. The contents of this drive go to every law enforcement agency, financial regulator, and news outlet across the country, simultaneously. Your family's name becomes synonymous with murder and fraud. Their financial empire crumbles under investigation, and you face a different kind of justice from the families of your victims. The standoff stretched between them. Preston's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on his desk as he evaluated options. A confession under duress is worthless, he said finally. This isn't duress, Kenton corrected. It's a choice. The same choice you've offered others: cooperate or face elimination. The difference is, I'm offering you a path to survival. Another long moment passed. Then Preston reached for the recorder. What exactly do you want to know? For the next hour, Preston detailed his operation, how he selected targets, gained their trust, manipulated them into criminal conspiracy, and eliminated them when they were no longer useful. He named accomplices, described methods, revealed the locations of evidence he'd preserved as insurance against betrayal. As Preston concluded, Kenton stood. This recording, along with Tessa's evidence, goes to DA Moore tonight. What happens next is up to the system. And if the system fails again, Preston asked, a hint of his earlier confidence resurfacing. My family has considerable influence. Recordings can be suppressed, evidence questioned. Then option 2 becomes active, Kenton stated simply. Every bit of information released, every name published. The threat hung in the air between them. Preston studied Kenton's face, perhaps searching for weakness or hesitation. Finding none, he sighed. You surprised me, Mr. Brower. I didn't think you had this in you. You never bothered to learn who I was, Kenton replied. Just what I represented as an obstacle. He gathered the recorder and moved toward the door. The authorities will be here within the hour. I suggest you use that time to consider how much cooperation might improve your circumstances. As Kenton reached the doorway, Preston called after him. Marla never loved you, you know. She was already looking for an exit when I found her. I just provided the opportunity. Kenton paused, absorbing the calculated cruelty of the statement, Preston's final attempt to inflict pain. That's the difference between us, he said without turning. I don't need everyone to love me to know my worth. Justice would come for Preston Connolly if not through the system, then through the truth his own words had revealed. Either way, he would never harm another family again. The Portland Riverfront Hotel gleamed in the afternoon sun. Kenton adjusted his tie and surveyed the lobby. 2 days had passed since the confrontation at Preston's property. Preston was in custody, his confession and Tessa's evidence creating a firestorm in 3 states. Now came Marla's reckoning. Everything's set, Rachel confirmed in his earpiece. She was stationed in a service room, monitoring the suite's surveillance system. DA Moore is in position with his team. Recording equipment is active. Kenton took the elevator to the 7th floor, where Suite 712 waited, a tastefully appointed space provided by the district attorney's office for this final act. Will arrive shortly after. Perimeter secure. Moore's people are in rooms on both sides. Everything gets recorded and witnessed by law enforcement. Good. Kenton rolled his shoulders, trying to release the tension. Where's Ash? With my sister in Beaverton. Safe, comfortable, and far from this mess. Target is on the elevator. Rachel's voice informed Kenton. ET, 30 seconds. Kenton removed the earpiece and slipped it into his pocket. The knock, when it came, was softer than he expected. He opened the door. Marla stood in the hallway, impeccably dressed in a charcoal business suit, hair pulled back severely. She looked exhausted, with shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't conceal. Kenton, her greeting was neutral. Come in. He stepped aside, allowing her to enter. Thanks for coming. She moved past him with the cautious air of someone entering territory they no longer considered safe. Her gaze swept the suite, taking in the documents on the table, the open wine bottle. You said you wanted to discuss terms, she said, remaining standing. I assume those are divorce papers. Among other things. Kenton gestured to a chair. Please sit. No. Marla sat stiffly, her handbag clutched in her lap like a shield. Let's keep this professional. Kenton took the seat across from her. I've been thinking about our situation, about what happens next. Marla's fingers tightened on her handbag. If you're talking about Preston and his associate, I had nothing to do with their other activities. I was a victim of manipulation. Were you? Kenton allowed skepticism to color his voice. That's not how it looked on the videos, Marla. Not when you were discussing how to stage my accident in the workshop. Not when you were planning to ship Ash off to boarding school afterward. Her eyes narrowed. I see. You didn't actually want to discuss terms. You wanted to rub my face in it. No, I genuinely want to understand. When did I become something to be eliminated? When did our son become an inconvenience? Don't be dramatic. It wasn't personal. Not personal. The words felt like scorching coals in his mouth. You plan my death, Marla. How much more personal does it get? Marla's composure slipped, her expression hardening. You want the truth? Fine. It started when I realized I'd wasted 15 years of my life playing house while my career stagnated. When I saw my college roommates becoming executives and board members while I attended your boring woodworking showcases and Ash's endless school functions. The venom in her voice struck Kenton with physical force. This wasn't just about money or an affair. This was years of resentment finally finding voice. So you decided murder was the answer, he asked, fighting to keep his tone level. Not divorce, not career counseling, not an honest conversation about your unhappiness. Divorce gets me half, Marla replied with chilling practicality. And I'd still be tied to you through Ash for years. This way, she stopped, seeming to realize how deeply she was incriminating herself. This way, you get everything Kenton finished for her. The insurance, the house, freedom from both obstacles in your life. He pushed a folder across the table containing photographs of Preston with various women, all similar to Marla in age and appearance. Abigail Winters. Kenton identified the first woman. Dead in a car accident, 2020. Tessa Rivera survived a carbon monoxide leak, 2019. He tapped another photo, and this one was taken last week. Preston and Kelsey discussing how they would stage your suicide after I was out of the picture. Marla stared at the images, her facade crumbling. He said I was different, that we were partners. You were a mark, Kenton corrected. One in a series. The DEA believes Preston and Kelsey may be responsible for up to 7 deaths over the past decade. They're building a case for serial murder. And me. Her voice had gone very small. What happens to me? That depends on your next move. Kenton laid it out plainly. Preston gave a full confession. He implicated you in the conspiracy to murder me for insurance money. The DEA has multiple videos of you discussing the plan, plus the financial records showing how you diverted funds to Preston's shell company. Marla's breathing quickened. It was his idea. All of it. You're on video discussing which chemicals in my workshop would cause the most convincing accident, Kenton interrupted. Planning how to be conveniently absent when happened. Deciding where to send our son afterward. Tears welled in Marla's eyes. What do you want from me, Kenton? The truth, he said simply. All of it. On record. Understanding dawned in her expression. This is being recorded. Yes. The district attorney is in the next room, listening to every word. Marla looked around wildly, then slumped in her chair. I'm going to prison, aren't I? Almost certainly, Kenton confirmed. The question is for how long? Cooperation now could mean the difference between 20 years and life without parole. A strange calm settled over Marla. And Ash, what happens to him? He stays with me. Sole custody. Will you tell him what happened? The truth. Kenton studied the woman who had been his wife. I'll tell him you made terrible choices, that you lost your way. The rest is up to you, in whatever communication the courts allow. Marla nodded slowly, then squared her shoulders. All right, I'm ready to make a statement. The adjoining door opened, and Tanner Moore entered with recording equipment. As Marla began her confession, Kenton found himself withdrawing emotionally, creating distance between himself and the horrifying narrative unfolding. This woman was not the Marla he had married. Perhaps she never had been. When Marla finished her statement, Moore signaled to his assistants to stop recording. Mrs. Brower, you'll need to come with us now. We have a warrant for your arrest. As one of the assistants recited Miranda rights, Marla turned to Kenton one last time. Tell Ash I'm sorry. Not for getting caught, for being the kind of mother who could consider him an obstacle. He deserves better. After Moore left with Marla, Kenton remained in the suite, staring out at the river. Life would continue. The question was how. The following weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, paperwork, and careful conversations with Ash. Kenton found himself navigating unfamiliar territory, victims advocate meetings, custody hearings, insurance investigations. Preston's confession had created a legal earthquake. His family's attempts to suppress the evidence failed when multiple victims came forward, emboldened by Tessa Rivera's decision to break her NDA publicly. The Connolly financial empire began to crumble under scrutiny, revealing decades of fraudulent practices that, in the end, Preston accepted a plea deal, multiple life sentences without possibility of parole in exchange for testimony against his remaining accomplices and details about victims whose fates remained unknown. Marla's cooperation reduced her sentence, but she would still serve 12 years for conspiracy to commit murder. She had made no attempt to contact Ash since her sentencing, honoring Kenton's request for distance, while their son processed the trauma of her betrayal. The insurance money, the prize that had motivated the entire conspiracy, remained untouchable in trust, designated for Ash's education and future. Kenton wanted nothing to do with funds that had nearly cost him his life. Fall colors painted the mountains surrounding Bend, Oregon, transforming the landscape into a tapestry of gold, crimson, and bronze. Kenton stood at the wide windows of his new workshop, watching a red-tailed hawk circle lazily over the pines. 6 months had passed since Preston Connolly's confession. Together with Will, who had surprisingly relocated to Bend as well, Kenton had established a new life in this smaller community, opening a custom furniture business named Ash and Iron. "How's the kid doing?" Will asked, inspecting a piece of black walnut with an appreciative eye. "Better," Kenton replied. "The new school's been good for him. Smaller classes, teachers who understand his situation. He's making friends again. And the nightmares." Kenton's expression tightened. "Less frequent. Still happens maybe once a week. He wakes up thinking his mother's in the house, that she's come back to hurt us." Will nodded, understanding the lingering effects of trauma. "Time will help. So will distance. And truth," Kenton added firmly. "I don't sugarcoat what happened. He deserves better than comforting lies." This philosophy had guided Kenton's approach to parenting in the aftermath. When Ash asked difficult questions, Kenton answered with age-appropriate honesty. The psychological counselor they'd seen initially had questioned this approach, suggesting gentler explanations might protect Ash from unnecessary pain. Kenton had disagreed. "The greatest danger comes from not recognizing threats," he'd explained. "I won't leave my son vulnerable by teaching him to ignore reality." Later that afternoon, Ash arrived from school. At 11 now, he'd grown taller over the past months, his face losing some of its childhood softness. The events had aged him, but not hardened him, a distinction Kenton monitored carefully. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, Uncle Will." Ash dropped his backpack by the door and approached the workbench. "Looks good. Want to help with the sanding?" Kenton offered, knowing his son enjoyed the tangible progress of smoothing rough wood to satiny perfection as they worked. Ash recounted his day at school, normal moments, precious in their ordinariness. That evening, after Ash had gone to bed, Kenton removed a small wooden box from his desk drawer. Inside was a single photograph of Marla, her booking photo from the arrest. The harsh lighting, the stunned expression, the prison jumpsuit all captured the reality of who she had become, stripped of pretense. Kenton studied it dispassionately, as he did periodically, not to nurse his anger, but to sharpen his perception. He kept no other images of her in the house. This single photo served not as a memento, but as a reminder of the danger in blind trust, of how thoroughly appearances could deceive, of the necessity of vigilance. Some might call it unhealthy, this refusal to forgive. The counselor had certainly suggested as much, talking about moving on and finding closure. But Kenton recognized these as comfortable fictions. Some betrayals changed the landscape permanently. Some actions couldn't be undone or forgiven without surrendering something essential. He would not model such surrender for his son. Instead, he would teach Ash to build with wood, with truth, with careful discernment about who deserved trust, to create solid things that endured. to recognize threats before they materialized, to understand that forgiveness was not an obligation owed to those who showed no remorse. Kenton returned the photo to its box, the box to its drawer. Tomorrow would bring another day of work, of parenting, of rebuilding. The foundation they'd established here was solid, forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, but ultimately stronger for having withstood both. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines surrounding their new home. Within these walls, despite everything, they had found not just survival, but the beginnings of something that might, in time, be called thriving. Kenton would never forgive, but he would build nonetheless something indestructible from the ashes of what had been destroyed. For Ash, for himself, for the future they would craft together, eyes open, hands steady, moving forward without forgetting what lay behind.